So we stand in front of Dollar Tree and basically,
such as this thing here.
All right, I'm excited to have a guest.
Metal right here, of course, everyone is.
Cuba is like they're under a dictator.
All right, we are live for a midweek edition of the People's Talk Show. Excited to be back and looking forward to connecting and finding out what's on your radar. Lots of things worth touching on, but as well, want to make sure, give everybody a chance to let their voice be heard. So feel free to let me know where you're watching from via the chat. Then when the phone lines open up, we'd love to hear from you directly. 313-462-0027 is the number to call and let your voice be heard. All right, so it's been a couple days since I've logged in, schedule-wise, conflict of scheduling, things of that nature, but I do the best I can to make sure I check in as best and as often as I can. But the world still moves on, and here we are now, midweek, and a lot of alarming stories circulating. One in particular has to do with the Russian intercontinental missile that was tested, and looks like the Russian army and things of that nature talking pretty big over there. And unfortunately, you never want to hear things like that. But we're at that point where the West versus East narrative is continuing to ramp up while the IMF is panicking over more people dumping their fiat currencies, trying to preserve and protect themselves. So they're panicking as well. So we're going to touch on a lot of things. But before I do that, let me check in via chat. It won't be long today. Just wanted to check in and hear from you guys and see what's going on. And as always, love to connect with new people. So if we have any new viewers out there, let me know where you're watching from. And I would definitely love to acknowledge your presence. And thank you for being a part of the fold. All right. So we got Joel checking in from Texas. Appreciate you. We got Jay from AZ. We got Rolf. What else we got here? We got Tom checking in as well. Stefan, Joanne, appreciate you. And we know 828, Carl checking in. All right. Appreciate you guys as always. And for those that might be new, want to make sure I encourage you to make sure you click that notification bell. Hopefully you're notified, as well as subscribe if you're new to the channel. We'd definitely love to have you come back and hang out with us. All right, so I'm gonna just scramble through a couple headlines of some things that caught my attention. Yeah, Tom, Satan 2, yeah, referring to the name of that intercontinental missile system that they built over there. Quite alarming, I must admit. Says the Russian ICBM that they tested today covered 36,000 miles in 15 minutes. Yeah, that is quick. That is very quick and very concerning. And yeah, man, it's just, things you never really want to talk about, but it's real life, and there's people out there willing to push some buttons. No pun intended with that one, but it's just nothing good comes from that type of stuff. But anyway, we're gonna make it work. We'll do the best we can. And definitely want to hear from everybody. So I'm going to rant last, go through some headlines, share my 2 cents, and open up the phone lines and get your guys' take on whatever else you guys want to touch on as well, because it is the People's Talk Show. And it is no talk show unless you have people to talk to. So, all right, let me jump right in. Let me share some headlines real quick. No visual aids today, schedule-wise, just not able to get to things I want to. But several articles coming out beginning of this week in particular about the IMF. And of course, the IMF is a Western, however you want to put it, they're the puppeteers / the overseers of the financial monetary system, along with the BIS and all the other entities created to establish this current Bretton Woods petrodollar system that's eroding. And so the more headlines coming out talking about their viewpoints on things and how, ultimately speaking, what's presented as one of their biggest threats happens to be the digital asset space. And of course, this past, was it February, if I'm not mistaken, or February, March, either one, whenever Biden came out with that little executive order talking about developing the CDC, or central bank digital currency, it had no real regulatory clarity overall on how the government would treat the digital asset space. But one thing I'm witnessing with the ramping up of the legacy financial system being included in the regulatory process is becoming quite evident who the regulatory bodies favor, and it happens to be the 2 big to fail banks. And of course, I got lots of thoughts on that, but I'm not going to rant too deep on that. But a system labeled as new, but being infiltrated or ran by the old players. So does that surprise anybody? I'm sure it doesn't. Anyway, headlines here. IMF, World Bank chiefs warn of a debt squeeze in poor nations. And so just that in of itself, it for those that are awake and aware and realize the entire process that the monetary system has been under for the last 100+ years is that debt rules the world. Whoever issues a debt ultimately oversees and controls nations, governments, politicians, you name it. And they've indebted and enslaved, monetarily speaking, emerging markets. And so the emerging market currencies, primarily second, third world countries, predominantly in the African continent, they're struggling severely as the Western nations, ideally the G7, G20 nations, ramp up the borrowing cost. It's placing more of a squeeze on those nations that borrowed in the stronger currencies, and it's causing the citizens in particular to flee from those local currencies. But this is just one of many stories. But just I'm going to share with you in a minute, like a little white paper put together by IMF, and they point the blame towards the Ukrainian conflict. But we know well before then things were not looking too good. But ultimately, with the poorest countries being squeezed, debt speaking, the cover up is the war and this past health experimentation stuff. It's causing life to become very uncomfortable as far as the sustainability or unsustainability of food and energy and things of that nature. And it's going to lead to a debt default wave of central banks, i.e., we're seeing what's happening in Sri Lanka and Lebanon and all those other countries where their currencies are not worth anything whatsoever other than to the people within those countries there. But yet their banks take on their liabilities, i.e., their government debt, and that's becoming very problematic as the banks will face a lot of pressure to basically make payments on those international bonds as well as those domestic bonds that they're holding on as or assets rather, but actually they're liabilities. But the debt squeeze, major debt defaults are underway right now, and the majority of it we know nothing about. At the same time, we got borrowing costs in the West skyrocketing. Of course, we're seeing mortgage rates, the bond yields, you name it, all that stuff. And what really gets me is how outside of the investors, those that are sophisticated in knowing how to manipulate and control and profit off of all those liabilities there, it's like watching a sinking ship. Ultimately, it's like as if the bond market will eventually be something worthwhile in the end when the currencies are completely destroyed. They're being used now as weapons, but there's no future in any debt obligations when denominated in a fiat currency. And of course, when it comes to here in the U.S., our treasuries and bonds of that nature are all fiat currency, or we use fiat currency derivatives of those instruments. So it's not much life in the long run in those things. But yeah, I'll leave it to whoever wants to participate in those things. But here's another one. IMF's official says split into a competing system would be a disaster for the global economy. So more IMF concerns about the rift between the East and the West. Ideally, this is all about Russia deciding to go about things their own way and no longer utilize the primary international reserve, which happens to be the dollars, as their primary source of interaction. And so this is causing a problem because they are basically hinting at the collaboration between Russia and China and how it's picking up. And it could be a concern, but then again, it's inevitable. So competing systems will be a disaster. Yeah, I would imagine so for those that are dependent upon the Western dollar denominated, Federal Reserve denominated debt instrument. So, but just more concerns there. And here's another one. And this was what I think we're going to see before my guess would be before the end of summer, we're going to see more regulatory clarity, like true meaningful clarity for the financial institutions in particular, not necessarily beneficial for us as individuals, but IMF warns of rising cryptocurrency risk in emerging markets. So they try to paint the risk as being something that they're concerned about for the individual users of those currencies. But when you look into what's really going on, I'm going to point at it in a minute in their little paper there, they're concerned with capital flight. You have millions, if probably not a billion or two, in those distressed emerging markets who have very little already. But what they do have, they're deciding to get out of the free falling currencies as fiat basically is tanking right now. And they're getting into the digital asset space. And it's becoming a safe haven for those who are able to get in when at this current moment, out of anticipation of those things going, as they say in that crypto space, to the moon, or basically just the absorption of purchasing power into something that's outside of their control. So they're saying it's a risk, right? It's a risk for them losing control. That's all about. That's what it's all about. Keep it moving. Couple more here. And I couldn't help but just notice this was out not long ago, but globally speaking, everyone knows that Ukraine is the primary scapegoat for why the monetary system is crumbling on top of the pandemic relief and all that other stuff. But the fact that you have the IMF and other nations supporting or pretending to support Ukraine at the same time, the U.S. is sending another 800 million, if I'm not mistaken, worth of military aid to Ukraine, as if it's actually going to serve any purpose whatsoever. Other than just funneling, they're literally funneling currency into the pockets of the people who are responsible for all the stuff that's happened with Ukraine as a puppet nation. But anyway, here's just an interesting headline. Ukraine needs $5 billion monthly to keep its economy afloat. Why is it the world's responsibility why is it for the U.S. taxpayers in particular to be on the hook for keeping the Ukrainian economy afloat? And if you also look into how a lot of the war munitions that's being given to them, it's been given under that act that I talked about, the Lend-Lease Act that was passed, which is basically saying we'll lend you all this aid, but it's like how will Ukraine be able to repay anybody whatsoever in their economy other than it being naturally rich with all the resources they have there? That's all been hijacked and belong to somebody else as well. So ultimately, it's just the last way of funneling as much currency as they can to get as much out of this system while they still can, because this thing here is literally running on borrowed time. And as I always mentioned before, it's becoming more and more evident how this person right here will be the last administration under this Federal Reserve note system, the way that it's been positioned for the last 100 plus years, while they're trying to usher us into something completely remodeled, not new, but remodeled with their digital versions of a currency. But anyway, keep it going. A couple more here, then I'll start ranting, open up the phone lines and get to some calls. We'll definitely love to hear what else is going on here. But there's no way we cannot, pay attention to what's happening in Russia, because we're being told one thing while in actuality everything is the complete opposite, in my opinion. It says Russia faces potential default scenario after using rubles to make the payments on dollar bonds, industry group rule. So at this current moment, doing a self-described as well as self-pronounced reset, I don't think Russia is concerned with any type of a default in a fiat system based on credit and debt. At the same time, they know the true essence of real wealth, and it happens to be in real world resources, and in particular with their movements towards gold as a anchor. Keep in mind it is relabeled again as a tier 1 asset, which means it's the creme of the creme of monetary wealth preservation tools, and they happen to have a lot of that. And so I don't think they're concerned with the defaults, but we know that on this side of the world, they want to make sure we are mindful of the fact that their economy is doing so bad, even though they have all the real world resources they need to sustain themselves for quite some time, I'd imagine. But it's just more Western propaganda. I think it's interesting to pay attention to, because we know what Russia's holding on to, or we know what they're choosing to operate in to establish trust in a system, and it happens to be real weight in the form of gold. And it's little brother or little sister, whatever you want to call it, silver and copper and everything else in between. So anyway, keep it moving. And so just to add on more to that discussion there, Russia tests a nuclear capable ICBM. As Putin warns enemies, it's food for thought. And so if this picture here is really that missile that they're referring to here, the new heavy Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile, this right here it looks pretty serious. And I was reading through this, and they're able to disperse one of those things in rapid time. And I appreciate, I think it was someone mentioned about the actual 36,000 miles in 15 minutes. That's that's a nice long distance. But one of the things here is that they say they can equip it without needing to put an actual nuclear warhead on it. And it says they can target strategic targets around the globe with kinetic impact energy and without the use of a nuclear warhead. So, just I'm not I'm not well versed in the scientific realm, but I had to look up that kinetic impact energy, and force times mass times weight equals a hell of an explosion of a like a shock wave of literally just energy just being dispersed at one time would definitely wreak havoc. And at the same, not necessarily as severe as nuclear, because that right there is, it's well beyond anything that we ever would want to experience in our lifetime. But just the sure wave force of energy that will be dispersed when that thing hits, if it hits, it's taking out a lot of stuff. And so I know I've got some people out there that are probably more proficient in describing what that would look like. So that's just more concern in and of itself. And okay, keep it moving. A couple more here, and I'll stop ranting. Okay, you cannot not talk about this. So just this visual aid here, I grabbed this off Twitter, but this is what Netflix has looked like today. Dropping, I heard latest figure. I'm not sure if it recovered some or what, but it was down approximately 70%. And I'm thinking, like, what if this graph right here, if you were to if I happen to have, erased all this stuff to the top left and put Dow Jones or S&P 500 or the Wilshire 5000 or something like that at the very top, and this thing mimicked the type of correction. And so I would say this is well beyond a correction. This was what people would call a crash. And so if Netflix, which happens to be one of the FANG stocks, you got Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google, and I think that's it. So they're one of the five primary leading drivers towards the illusion that the economy is based upon the stock market. If this boy corrects 5%, or I'm sorry, 70%, what type of shock wave would that send throughout the monetary system when the overall market happens to correct of something like that? That'd be real severe, and it'd be a massive transfer of wealth out of the people who were dependent upon these things continuing to go up as if, they can never come down. So just something we'll keep in mind. Will the Fed allow it to happen? My bet is that they probably will, just because at some point they're going to be ready to roll out or reintroduce a new rebranded system altogether. And so they'll let all this other stuff decay. Anyway, keep it moving. On another note, here is something that's important as well. Just paying attention more so to oil flows. And with the recent strategic petroleum reserves being unleashed for the next, I think, 60 days, and me seeing more reports, I actually posted on Twitter and Telegram some charts showing the outflow of American or U.S. reserves that's being exported out of this country. And in a time where gas prices here are relatively high. And to me, it's the outright depletion of American reserves heading into the summer and fall. And I don't have any confidence whatsoever that it will be replenished, given the fact that the goal is to go net carbon zero towards 2030. So this will easily be an excuse to why it's time to move on to some other form of energy other than, petroleum. At the same time, prices through the roof. Barrel oils will be probably God knows how high. But this is just some stuff here that's historical in nature in a not so good sense. But it says U.S. exported a record amount of crude and refined oil products last week, surging about 10 million barrels per day for only the second time ever. The U.S. is acting as the barrel of last resort to a global energy market for oil. So ultimately speaking, this is historical in a not so good way of the outflow of energy from our country into the hands of Europeans to help prop them up while they play a part of the Western's agenda to not use Russian energy to try to stick it to Russia when they're actually sticking it to themselves. German PPI, man, 30%, crazy numbers out here. Nothing good comes from that. Okay, let's keep it moving. And so here is that IMF little report I want to talk about just for a minute. So this is as of this month here, shockwaves from the war in Ukraine test the financial system resilience. So if you remove just their cover up, they're using this right here as their cover up. If you remove that and you just say shockwaves from a failing monetary system or shockwaves from just too much debt in the system, test the financial system's resilience. That right there will probably play a lot better, wouldn't you say? And of course, the cover up, they need something to point the blame to. But if you read through this, it gives articles and graphs, and this plays into what my last little rant will be, and this plays into the financial stability in reference to the fintech sector and what they are focusing on here. They're talking about decentralized finance and overall digital asset space. So this chapter explores 3 key types of fintech to illustrate these risks. Digital banking. So they're saying basically the be your own bank concept is disrupting the legacy banking system. That's of concern. And it says here, long established fintech firms in the U.S. mortgage market. So there's more talk now coming out about having Bitcoin backed mortgages. And that right there is a threat as well, because people are not actually necessarily borrowing, going into debt. Rather, they're pledging collateral in the form of their digital assets in order to take out mortgages. Takes away the bankster's cut. That's a problem. So, and the last one here, as I mentioned, DeFi. So those 3 areas there are what they're focusing on. And as a result of that, what they're trying to basically say is that we need to now regulate this. The risks are becoming too great. We want to protect the consumers. We want to protect, the mom and pops. We want to make sure that there's better clarity as to how that, people can function in this space. I'm thinking like, oh, really? Now it's time to do that? No. They were buying time, stalling, allowing this push for adoption to take place while the too big to fail banks work their way in, or more likely revealing themselves as being key players in this digital asset space. And so with banks now or soon to be able to hold as well as transact on behalf of depositors in this digital asset stuff, stable coins in particular, but all the other assets eventually follow suit. You have more information now about how Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan are pretty much the front financiers for Ethereum. Ethereum staking, or Ethereum 2.0, is set to launch later this year. That's going to be an ultimate game changer for the banking sector, because they all have forked a piece of Ethereum in order to create their own privately closed Ethereum-based tokens for interaction between banks. And on top of the XRP stuff that everybody loves talking about, they're ready to roll. And so now that they're ready to roll, here comes the regulatory clarity. So what I wanted to touch on, actually meant I wanted to do a little separate video, but I wanted to talk about how in the next, I would say, just throw a time frame there. Let's say 2-3 months. Next 2-3 months, there's going to be more of a cry from the financial regulators, i.e., FINRA or FINSA. If I'm sure I'm saying it incorrectly, but another regulatory body set up globally to coordinate how every country must come into agreement on how they're going to treat and conduct themselves when it comes to cryptocurrency, disguised as a way of protecting the average person. But in actuality, it's all about bettering themselves. And so let me actually grab this article real quick if I can. Let me see here. Maybe I can. Did I have it? I did not save it. Okay. But I did have an article. Talking about just, the 3 C's, compliance. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but the 3 C's the IMF is going to use as a framework to have nations globally come together. And so it'll probably originate within the G7, because that's where the most currency is at and most debt is at this current moment. And it's all disguised that basically making it harder for your average investor to enter and to exit within that system there. So we'll find out what that system is made of course, whether it's resilient or not, or whether they'll win at this system as well. Okay. What else I got here? Let me see if there's anything else. So here's something that I think somebody in the Discord brought this to my attention, but there is a job opening in Canada, and I'll read the description. So if anybody's qualified and want to, apply for this, feel free to do so. But, the World Economics Forum agenda is still progressing under the table. And so it says Jason Kenney is hiring a digital ID manager. So give you an idea of the job description here. It says your priority is to build and manage platform services. Let me see. Platform services like digital identity, digital payment, notification and engagement, user experience, data collection, and content and document management. It says you'll succeed by establishing and scaling teams that are interactive, user-centered, data-driven, and focused on digital delivery with cloud-era ways of working. The job pays from $125 to $164. And so if anybody is interested in joining the World Economic Forum's push to enslave humanity by being a digital ID manager, you can contact somebody in Canada and they'll point you in the right direction. And so, that's just what's happening. But anyway, I got a couple more articles, but I'll spare you guys that. But another thing I wanted to touch on is, the fiat currency free fall. And so the Japanese yen, of course, is tanking. And it's to be expected. And then some people may say the Dixie, everything's doing well. The dollar, referring to the basket, the dollar basket is doing well. But, that's short-term viewpoint and, rather than a long-term of at some point, the U.S. will not be able to continue to do what they're doing as far as force feeding the world Federal Reserve notes and debt obligations and being able to actually receive real world items. That exchange will come to an end at some point. And as a result of that, you don't want to be the last person holding the bag. But holding the bag in the short term will definitely do you wonders because, as I always say, there will be a fire sale pretty soon. And that's why I think a lot of the billionaires are already positioned heavily in cash to take advantage of it. And then all hell will break loose at that point because it's going to be a mad dash out of those debt instruments. So it's just interesting that as I watch the exchange ratios for fiat to fiat, everything is pegged to or measured against the Federal Reserve note because it is the world reserve currency. But then again, for people in the monetary sphere that know the end of these notes here, the peg or the unit of stability happens to be measuring it, the exchange against gold. It serves you best. And then some in the short term, people can use Bitcoin too because it has done a lot better than most of the fiat currencies. But yet, once again, it's just a sponge that absorbs all that stuff. But I can rant on and on and on, but I'm not. Okay, so let me just open the phone lines, man. Let's talk. Let me see here. Let me get this set up here. So I'm just trying some things on my back end here. Scheduling is kind of everywhere now. So I saw a question out there about when am I coming on. I'm always try to do 4 p.m. But once again, heading into spring and summer, schedule changes. So I'll do the best I can and try to make sure I connect daily. And that's why, it's fun when I can do it because I can just focus on trying to put everything together, short and concise, spit it out there, let everybody chew on it a little bit. But yet ultimately, at this point in the game, everybody, from what I gather, the people I follow, we're regurgitating the same information. We know this instrument here is toast. Now it's a matter of how fast or how slow. Because as I've always said, there's no financial future in a Federal Reserve note. That is not going to change. And so it's just interesting to see how I'm more interested really in getting into some other subjects that really have me interested. And that happens to do with the monetization of your DNA. And so I've been doing a lot of deep diving and trying to understand this from the spiritual essence of things, the push by the big pharma, big banks, and governments as they look to further concentrate power into the World Health Organization's hands and how rule of law will be null and void. Individual nations' constitutions will be basically turned over to a single body at some point soon. And it's all about basically taking what our so-called sovereignty, through the Social Security aspect and just rolling that property right that they think they have over humanity right into the DNA level. And got a lot more stuff I can talk about with that, but I'll get to it later. Hello, caller. Where are we calling from?
Mike, it's low blood pressure. Corpus Christi, how's it going?
LBP, doing good, man. Give me a quick thought. What's in your mind?
Man, I just maxed out another credit card, Mike. 7 kilos.
Hey, man, do what you do, man.
Hey,
Yeah.
look, everybody's waiting for silver to skyrocket. I don't think it's going to skyrocket because it's denominated in dollars. The only time it's going to skyrocket is when the dollar's done. I don't think it's ever going to move from there.
Yeah, I would definitely say at some point, like pricing things in fiat terms will shift. Not just a matter of how long before that happens. Because as of right now, everybody, 99.99% of people only know pricing something in dollar terms. So they don't know about pricing it in weight or some other form of a measurement. So that's going to be a long time in my opinion, but definitely possible.
Also, they're gonna yield. What is it? Yield. They're gonna control the interest rate. They call it
yield curve control. They're going to try, but once again, man, it's on an experiment. So they don't know much more than we do. I don't think, other than their end goal of trying to reset the system in its entirety and usher out digital identifications and CBDCs and everything else. So that's one thing I know they're sure of. But how they get to that point, I don't think they got that worked out. I wouldn't give them that much credit, to be honest with you.
I hope so. They say market forces are stronger, but
yeah.
I don't know. They've been controlling it pretty good so far.
Yeah, the system is rigged thoroughly. They own and have their hands in everybody influential's pockets. So it's not hard to, sway people with a little bit of fiat these days or promising them the world or something like that. So, yeah, a lot of people are in lock and step with it. But, yeah, they're man. They're definitely they're not God. So they're capable of making mistakes along the way.
We'll see. How's the weather in Detroit right now?
Yesterday, extremely cold, snowed the day before, but today the sun is shining. It's not as cold, but it's got a little chill out there. But I heard 80s coming pretty soon. I heard it's in our next couple of days or so. It's in our future.
Man, I'm telling you, get down here. It's 84. Everybody's in the pool having a good time.
Hey, man, I'm jealous, man. One day, man. But hey, appreciate you calling, man.
All right, Mike. All right. Have a good one. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Everybody in the pool. Oh, man, that sounds fun. All right, let's keep it moving. Soul Brother says, seek the Lord early while he may be found. 100%. All right, let's keep it going. What else we got here? Feel free to throw out some thoughts. Dr. Moda says, BTC about to moon. Okay. And so let me ask you guys a question. As far as a measuring stick, what do you guys prefer to measure real world value in or real world resources in? Do you use ounces? Do you use kilos? Do you use acres as far as referring to land? Do some prefer stats or satoshis in the Bitcoin space, or a certain basket of certain tonnage of, say, wheat or what? Like, and so to LBP's point of how we view prices, that's going to change, in my opinion, this decade. And I think for the financial sector, it has a lot to do with the whole Basel III and them making gold or reestablishing gold again as a tier 1 asset, by that becoming the banker's measurement of true capital. Gold itself, that's the big scramble by all the banks to get rid of the paper stuff and get physical. And so at some point, once they're done with that, I think either the system will crumble on its own, or they're trying to get as much gold for the banking sector and the central banks, sovereign nations, that they can, in case something happens before their intended date. Because mind you, oh man, let me just once again, man, yesterday, came across this. Let me pull this up here. But their intended plan still has something to do with a cyber attack. And so, just speaking of cyber attack, I think it was over this past weekend or something of that nature. There was, I think, 30 nations or 30 something or another I read that got together. And they're pointing the blame already towards Russia. They're saying that they're bracing for impact for when Russia decides to cause this next cyber security event. So let me see. 30 nations or 30 30 nations prepare. Let me see. Prepare for Russian cyber attack. Let me see if this is the case. Because I did see the headlines. Let me see if I can find the article. No, okay. Maybe not. Okay, so, but I did see an article yesterday that talked about preparation. So, of course, there's more preparation. Here's just something that popped up. A fake cyber war held in Estonia could help nations prepare for real life threats. So, you have people out here preparing for. So, here it goes. It says from the tiny Baltic nation of Estonia, some 30 nations are participating in a mock cyber war exercise. While the annual NATO-led exercise may be fiction, the threat emanating from Russia is very real. So just that in of itself lets us know that they are preparing for something. And of course, for those that are, let's just have some truth here, they're preparing for it because they're going to be the ones that either flip the switch or hit enter. And when they hit enter, meaning one of the Five Eyes, one of the global government cyber security systems or whoever, when they hit enter, that's when all hell going to break loose in the system. And the primary use of that will be multifold. Cover up the banking situation, depositors, funds, error. It's going to say error on screen or zero or something like that, as well as, power grids may, poop, light goes off or something like that. So it's going to be a chain of events to really, this is going to be the ultimate destabilizer to the global world order because this is what they want. And there's been more than enough clues to let me know that all this preparation is just not done in vain. So they're literally preparing for the day that they say they click enter on the computer, but on the computer board, and that's when stuff goes a little bit problematic. And now it's a matter of like, do they have a set date that somebody will hit enter, or will they let things unfold and see how this whole Russia, Ukraine, destroying biolabs, disrupting the deep state's agenda because they're concerned with perhaps, Putin might have gone rogue and decided to go against the WEF's agenda. And if he becomes too problematic, we'll hit enter and blame it on him. Or perhaps, things are unraveled before then. So, we'll find out. There's a lot of actors at play. There's so many different angles about this. While most people, for the most part, just focus on the financial side of things. It's like, hey, gas is going up, or this is going up, or whatever, traveling is more. Okay, that's a very small inkling of a problem in comparison to, the idea of somebody hitting enter on a button and the entire global monetary system really rebooting. They're going to reboot the system 100%. So this is how you pull off the ultimate heist in all humanity, because it disrupts everybody's lives 10 times worse than being locked down to slow the spread for 15 days. You know what I'm saying? 15 days is small in comparison to what somebody hitting enter on a keyboard would do if the power grid and banking system and all the other stuff goes down. So that's just stuff that is a possibility, but I'll see. Hello, caller. Where are you calling from?
Yeah, Mike, Steve, Region 9.
Steve, what's going on, my friend?
Hey, people better be paying attention to more than the financial. Look up, find themselves in the camp somewhere.
Yeah, that stuff is happening like right now with what's those camps happening in China right now. People protesting, they starving. Yeah, that's not fun.
Yeah, people jumping out of windows and stuff over there.
Yeah, I've seen the video footage, man. That's something else.
Yeah. Hey, quick thing. I sent you one article on a new article on chip in the hand.
Yeah.
for payments. If you can throw that in the queue.
Yeah.
But what I really called for was this guy Harari.
Yeah.
With the World Economic Forum.
Right.
This dude's off the chain. He's off the hook. We thought Klaus Schwab has said some crazy things.
Yeah.
People better find out who this guy is. I don't know what his position is.
Yeah.
With them, but I've heard his conversation and that video there. If you can post that too.
Yeah.
About Harari, but I'll just hit these bullet points and get off so you guys can talk about it. These are the bullet points that I've heard come out of this guy's mouth. Let's see.
Yeah.
Don't need some pie in the sky God.
Yeah.
What do we do with all the useless people?
Right. Billions of them. He said billions of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his response to that was put them on drugs and video games, i.e., metaverse or whatever. These are things coming out of his own mouth, and watch the videos so you can watch. This guy's cold blooded.
Yeah.
Just listen to the way it rolls off of his tongue.
Yeah.
And we.
Yeah, go ahead. I was a lot of thoughts coming to mind, but go ahead. I'll let you finish off.
Oh yeah. And then he says we can now hack human beings, so we're just a piece of software to him.
Yeah.
And just the way that he says it.
Right.
Once
like
you see it on the video, you see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, he says it like, you know, it's bit like it was like it's a no-brainer. Like that's the plan. Like, you know, like it's common knowledge amongst the people who, you know, pay his salaries and who support his. Well, he's a professor, and so he's a Jewish professor that is, you know, portraying his own people and everything in between. This guy's just cold-blooded, straight up satanic at the core essence of it. Like he don't mind. God, there's no God to him. You know, he is God. You know, so that's how his way of thinking. So, yeah, very concerning.
Two or three more that he said. Will monitor and control humans from underneath their skin. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, let that marinate.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
Man
will be.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. Speaking of which, under their skin, I posted a video on Twitter about everybody talking about Elon Musk bid to, you know, buy Twitter, and I was saying Musk is leading the way. Government funded as well with Neuralink, which is to actually have the chip implanted in your brain. So I put out there, you know, if Neuralink sees and he buys Twitter, you can just have it automatically uploaded in real time. So you don't need a phone no more. You can check your news feed just by winking your eye, and you have instant access to Twitter in your brain. So that's what this guy's going with this.
Exactly. And like I said, you know, once you see the video and you see it coming out of this guy's mouth and the way that he's saying it,
yeah,
you just thought that he was that Five Guys burger just saying, I'll take a double with cheese, extra mayonnaise. That's the way that he comes off. Anyway, these last two ones, that will be organic and organic, which he's right about that. When people says they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. And then the last one he says, free will is dangerous and should be eliminated.
Yeah, that sounds like a straight out of States playbook right there, my friend. Hey, Steve, man, I appreciate it as always, man. Thanks for bringing us some real talk. Yeah, that was real talk. Thank you, my friend.
Enjoy. You guys take care.
Yeah, be good. Yeah, so that's, you know, so once again, you know, this is not like, you know, we're far left field conspiratorial, like, you know, this is real talk from their mouth. And just look at who's funding them. Like, you know, who patents on this type of technology. It's not out there for fun. Like this is what I was talking about earlier for those who just jumped in, how a lot of people have been trying to brush up on is understanding human genetics and how ultimately speaking, you know, your chromosomes, your DNA strands, like they're trying to tokenize that. Like that's where this is heading. I was listening to a video earlier. I think it was, I'm not sure where it came from. I think it was in a Discord, but I think Steve shared it to me about Dr. Lee Merritt talking about how Ancestry.com and 123.me and the PCR test, how all that was to gather human DNA so that they can do stuff with that and further their evil agenda of trying to basically tokenize and monetize the human cell structure. Like that's what this is going. And so this is, you know, take of it what you may, but the enemy's at work full-fledged. But once again, we knew this, we know how this all ends for those that are in faith. And, you know, as I say, kingdom kids, you know, we're the kids of a king, an eternal king at that. So that's the good news about all this. So, all right, people, we're approaching our 44 minutes. As always, I appreciate everybody for blessing me with your time. I appreciate you for hanging out with me. If you've enjoyed any of this, hit that thumbs up button, show your support for the channel. And back at it tomorrow, same time, same place. 4 p.m. is going to be a set time, borrowing my schedule or whatnot. So definitely would love to have you guys join me tomorrow. And other than that, keeping it plugged in, keep it moving forward, stay prayed up, stay blessed up, take advantage. And so one thing that was, I don't want to say, one thing that I feel strong about, and I'm not going to say, God told me or not like that, but this is just, spiritual sense. I'll just say it that way for whatever it's worth. Given the fact that we're witnessing all of a sudden, the health and all these people dialing things down, no mask when you fly, and all this, all this, they're dialing back the pressure for some reason. And of course, it has to do with getting us through to midterms. But yet, once again, if you question this prior election process with the ballots and things like that, there's been more than enough evidence showing that all that stuff was not legit in and of itself in its entirety. So what will make me think that any type of election process moving forward will be legit? So I expect a lot of fraudulent criminality coming up this summer and this fall. Point is, things might return to semi-normal, barring the consumer price of everyday goods moving forward, because of the immediate need for people to secure themselves financially as well as in real world resources. There's going to be a rampant pace to get as much real stuff out of the system. So there'll be more hoarding this spring and summer like never before, and anticipation of a very cold, possibly, powerless type of winter that could be in the cards if this plays out in their favor. So, it's more important now than ever to really pray for spiritual discernment, as well as to unite in prayer for divine intervention for this country, as well as the body of Christ in its entirety, because those that are of faith, we're the ones that have the power that can move mountains in this type of environment. And so I think, if enough people came together in prayer and lift up the Lord and literally sought his face, this nation needs to repent. This world needs to repent. But I don't anticipate that happening, because we got to get to the end of this. Revelation tells us clearly how this ends. But point in case is, it's never been more important to really spiritually discern truth from a lie. And of course, nothing to do with the headlines you see on TV. We all know that's a bunch of crap. But getting in the word daily, staying prayed up, letting the Lord lead you. And then once the Lord shares something with you, don't be afraid to reverberate that message from the mountaintops so that other people can have a chance at also getting some good news, as well as being encouraged spiritually and things of that nature. Like, the body of Christ is meant to be edified continuously by other believers. That's why it's never been more important to gather with fellow believers so you can be encouraged. So but anyway, that's just some things that's on my mind. But taking advantage of the opportunity right now, especially this summer, to secure yourself with energy. However you got to learn, whatever you got to learn, whatever you got to do, just in case there happens to be a much more colder winter coming up. So preparing for the winter right now as best you can, whatever ways you can. So those are things I might end up spending more time doing as far as, food, water, energy, things of that nature, because I think it's important. So anyway, with that being the case, people, I did miss some calls. Forgive me. I ran too much, but had to get that off my chest while I still could. But anyway, it's time to move on. I want to encourage everybody to be blessed, be safe, stay prayed up. And as always, I want to end with a little bit of prayer. Let's lift up the good Lord right now, thanking him for the opportunity to gather, because we are still in the land of free. Ability to be able to do this. So, Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for your goodness, your mercy, your grace, and your truth. Lord, we thank you for your word, which is a light unto our path. We pray that each and every person that's tuned in right now will take an interest in your word like they never have before, to further strengthen their relationship with you, Father, so they can grow into the men and women that you've created them to be, so that they can disperse their gifts right now, Father. The world needs light to be shined in darkness, and we know this is a season that this is meant to happen, Father. And I thank you for what you're going to do in my life and everyone's life that's tuned in, Father, and just continue to be good to us all. Be with our brothers and sisters being persecuted right now, Father, for their faith, wherever they're in this world. We ask that you would strengthen them, Father, allow them to stand firm on their belief in you, knowing that, Father, we have been called to inherit an eternal kingdom, and the kingdom is accessible right now through your Spirit in each and every one of us. We thank you in advance. In the name of the King, amen. All right, people. Keep it sweet and simple, straight to the point. Praise the King. All right. That's all she wrote. I can go on, but I'm not. Back at it tomorrow. Same time, same place. And until then, see you later. Peace.